from the front of the podium. And surprisingly, I'm not going to have a PowerPoint presentation. There won't be any slides. The topic that I've chosen is it's called connectivity. Now, before I explain that, I'll tell you that I am both a New York lawyer and, despite my strange accent, an English barrister. I'm also the founder of two legal tech companies. I founded myBarrister in London 5 years ago, and myLawyer in Singapore about 18 months ago. Later in the talk, I'll tell you a little bit about that. Now, the reason that I am not going to use slides is a function of the definition of connectivity. What you find when you look up the word, there is one definition that is almost archaic, and it really relates to the relation between one person and another. They talk about being connected. And that's the reason why I'm not going to be using slides. Because if I am constantly turning around and looking at a slide, I'm not connected with you. But by virtue of not using the device, it's really no different than when I'm in court. Because when I'm in court as an advocate, I'm looking at the judge. I'm not looking at anything else. I am connected with her. So the reason for the title is the double entendre, the two different definitions. Of course, as tech people, you will know that we use connectivity to talk about the connection with a computer, the connection with a system of technology. And of course, I will talk about that as well. So, I started practicing law in 1968. This is my 50th year of practice. Now, I started getting ready for my career at the University of Chicago Law School. I actually thought that I was going to be a law professor. So during the 3 years that I was at the University of Chicago, I wrote an article, which, thank God, after 3 years of work, was published by the University of Chicago Law Review. What I didn't understand when I left Stanford to go to the University of Chicago was that law schools are businesses. And I went to law school in the middle of the war that the United States was conducting in Vietnam. Needless to say, I wasn't a big fan of that. But I was also ignorant of the implications. One of the implications of that war was a function of the draft that the Americans had instituted. Literally all able-bodied young men were being drafted out of college and out of law school to go to Vietnam. The result of that was the law schools that I wanted to teach at were not hiring. So after 3 years of writing this fantastic article that actually received critical acclaim in the academic community, I was unable to get a job at any one of the top 5 law schools. The only law schools that were hiring were, shall we say, more modest in terms of their reputation. And I was afraid if I took a job at one of those law schools, I would never get out, that I would never get to one of the top law schools. Because there's a lot of, in the United States, what I call academic discrimination. So in any event, I thought about it, and I thought, well, I might as well start my career as a lawyer. And maybe the article that I wrote will be of help there. So in 1968, I took a job at a big Chicago law firm called the Sun & Shine Firm. And the first thing that they told us, which was a bit of a shock, was that it was important for young lawyers to have clients. They actually expected that someone like me, first-year lawyer, would somehow bring business to the firm. Now, I come from a very modest family background. I didn't know anyone in the family was a lawyer. No one in the family was hiring lawyers. So I thought, well, I have an ace in the hole. I have my law review article. Modification of a contract in New York, criteria for enforcement. So obviously, by the way, I'm disclosing this publicly for the first time ever, I thought that people would start calling me because they read my fabulous article. It was already something that the faculty at my law school thought highly of. Well, it's now been 50 years since my law review article was published. And shockingly, I've yet to get my first vote. So that wasn't really a good way to find a client. But I was young, I was naive, and I didn't know better. What happened was my specialty was representing commercial finance companies. I both documented their loans, and I was also an advocate. When they had a problem that required a court application, I would do that as well. And about 2 years into the practice of law, another friend of mine who trusted me and knew what I did came to me and said, Ron, I'm leaving the big company I'm with. I'm going to start my own company, and I'd like you to represent me. Well, I was in total shock because my first client didn't quite know how to handle it. And I was also puzzled as to why he came to me instead of an older lawyer who's more experienced. Long story short, fortunately, we were successful. He got the financing he needed. I documented it. I actually got paid, which is fantastic. But I remained puzzled as to why he instructed me. Well, my career in Chicago lasted for 12 years. And basically, I continued to represent commercial finance companies. And every year, I had more and more people calling me to represent them if they were borrowing money, or if a finance company was lending money, or if they needed a litigator. And still, I couldn't figure out why they were coming to me, because I was still pretty green in the ears, so to speak. The answer is because I was connected with them. Every time someone instructed me, I did my best to do a high-quality piece of work. I was respectful to the client. If they had a problem, I tried to rectify it. And what happens to you if you're a young lawyer and you do things in that way, people start to refer other matters to you. They will say to their neighbors, well, I just had something done by Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, and therefore, I think you should call that person. So that's a type of connectivity that took me decades to figure out. But fortunately, I continued to work hard, to be careful, to be respectful, to create trust. So after 12 years in Chicago, I had a truly vibrant practice acting for finance companies. I was also doing some lecturing. I would lecture on topics that were relevant to my practice. That was my effort to sort of stay involved in academia. And one day I had a call from a client to handle a major litigation in Portland, Oregon. Fortunately, I was successful. We won in court. My adversary was Citicorp. They were represented by a big New York law firm called Sherman and Sterling. About 2 months after I won the case, I received a phone call from Sherman and Sterling. This was 1980. They asked me to come to New York for dinner. Based on the success I had in that case, they made me an offer of partnership. I left my Chicago practice behind, and I went to Sherman and Sterling. Now, I had no New York contacts. I just had my contacts from Stanford and the University of Chicago. But I did the same thing in New York that I had done in Chicago. I connected with people, I was respectful, I created trust. And so, after 20 years in New York, I had a vibrant practice, but it was in a different area. I ended up becoming an international insolvency specialist as well as leasing. And I lectured in Hong Kong, I lectured in the Great Hall of China, all because of various connections that I had made. Finally, I decided that I did not want to stay in New York, despite the fact that I loved Sherman and Sterling. A friend of mine in Freshfields saw me. He suggested that I move to London to become an English barrister. And again, this was because we were connected. He and I had worked at BCCI together. I was the lead lawyer in the United States. He was the lead lawyer in the UK. And because of that connection, he introduced me to a chambers in Gray's Inn, South Square. And for the third time, I changed my practice. I ended up, for the last, 10, 12 years, doing military contract disputes. That has nothing to do with international leasing, has nothing to do with international insolvency, but it has all to do with connectivity. Because I had worked so closely with this man, who by the way was a managing partner of Freshfields, I was able to create a third career in London without ever having gone to Oxford, Cambridge. I was also admitted to the English bar. I was given a double waiver. I did not have to take the exams. I did not have to become all, again, based on connectivity. Well, to pull all this together, about 5 years ago, I decided to create a legal tech company called myLawyer. And I did it because the bar was slowly losing work to solicitors. The idea behind the company was that direct action work was something that the bar was finally allowed to do in 2004, but they didn't know how to get clients. So I created a company, I capitalized it, I brought in technical people, created a website, and we advertise on the internet to bring work to the bar, and the barristers pay us a monthly registration fee. We then duplicated the same idea here in Singapore. Here it's called myLawyer. And I'm proud to tell you that not only am I celebrating 50 years at the bar this year, but today myLawyer has released an app. It's in the App Store and it's in the Google Play Store. And the goal of this app, which by the way is free, is to create a global community of lawyers, to connect every single lawyer on the planet. Now, what is that going to achieve? I think it's going to achieve a lot. It will enable the lawyers to send business to each other for free. It will enable lawyers to find lawyers to associate with for free. It will enable big companies to come on the app and find lawyers for free. We will never charge for any of this. The model for myLawyer is the free app. Now, if the lawyer wants cloud storage, we have unlimited cloud storage for $5 a month. There has to be some charge for that because Google charges us for cloud storage. That's the least expensive cloud storage on the internet. No one provides unlimited storage for $5 a month. So pulling all this together, that to me is the ultimate in connectivity. We are going to push hard this year and next and the year after to sign up literally the entire legal community. And what the community is going to be able to do in the app will only be limited by their creativity. We literally believe that this app is the functional equivalent of a box of Lego. So with that, hopefully all of you will download the app. We have an iOS version, we have an Android version, we have double encryption. We are not able to see what you're writing. It's all text, it's totally protected. And that, as I said, in my view, is the essence of creativity. Thank you.